The lunar dust swirled in lazy eddies around Jack Harper's worn boots, a testament to the desolation of Sector 17, an abandoned industrial complex that most considered nothing more than a graveyard of failed human ambition. Overhead, the earth hung like a blue-white jewel, a constant reminder of the world he'd left behind. Jack adjusted the seal on his environmental suit, the movement causing a cascade of soft metallic clicks from the experimental panels attached to his research rig. 37 rejections. That's how many times the scientific community had dismissed his research proposals. 37 times he'd been told that his approach to metallurgy was nothing more than a pipe dream, a mathematical fantasy that defied the known laws of material science. But Jack knew something they didn't. Something that burned in the core of his being like the molten metals he studied. The workshop around him was a chaotic symphony of half-finished prototypes, holographic data streams, and strange metallic compounds suspended in containment fields. Most researchers would have called it a mess. Jack called it potential. Each failed experiment was just another step closer to something revolutionary. His latest project sat in the center of the workshop. A small ingot no larger than his palm, composed of an unprecedented alloy that defied conventional understanding. Months of work had gone into its creation, blending rare earth elements with experimental quantum reactive compounds that most of his colleagues believed were nothing more than theoretical constructs. "Come on," Jack muttered, adjusting a series of precision laser calibrators. "Show me something interesting." The workshop's ambient lighting flickered, a constant reminder of the aging lunar infrastructure. Power was always at a premium in these forgotten research outposts. Most had been abandoned after the Great Resource Wars, leaving behind shells of scientific dreams and broken promises. Jack's fingers danced across a holographic interface, initiating a complex series of stress tests. The metallic ingot sat nestled in a containment chamber designed to withstand extreme conditions. Electromagnetic pulses began to cascade around the sample, measuring its molecular response at frequencies that would typically tear most materials apart. Something unusual happened. The ingot began to vibrate, not the standard resonance of a material under stress, but a deliberate, almost rhythmic pulse that seemed to defy the very laws of physics Jack had spent his entire career studying. The holographic readouts began to flicker, data points dancing in patterns that made no immediate sense. "What the hell?" he whispered. Most researchers would have immediately documented the anomaly, prepared a cautious report for peer review. But Jack Harper wasn't most researchers. He leaned closer, adjusting the containment field's parameters, pushing the experimental alloy to its limits. The vibration intensified, but it wasn't destructive. Instead, the metallic surface began to shimmer, developing a strange iridescent quality that seemed to pulse with an internal light. Jack's heart raced. Years of ridicule, of being called a scientific maverick, of watching more conservative researchers climb the academic ladder while he was left behind. It all came down to this moment. Data streams erupted across his holographic interface. Molecular bonds were reconfiguring themselves in real time, creating a dynamic structural matrix that responded to external stimuli in ways no known material ever had. The ingot wasn't just absorbing energy, it was communicating with it. A sudden power surge caused the workshop lights to dim. For a moment, Jack feared he'd blown another circuit. But the containment field remained stable, and the metallic sample continued its impossible dance. Something fundamental had changed. Jack could feel it in his bones, in the electric charge of the air around him. This wasn't just another failed experiment. This was a breakthrough that could rewrite everything humanity understood about material science. Outside the workshop's reinforced windows, the lunar landscape stretched into infinite darkness. Earth continued its silent watch, unaware that in this forgotten corner of human exploration, something extraordinary was about to change everything. Jack Harper allowed himself a smile. The scientific world had no idea what was coming. The diplomatic vessel of the Zarn Collective emerged from hyperspace, like a crystalline mountain suspended in the void of space. Its exterior defied human architectural understanding. a massive fractal-like structure that seemed to grow and reconfigure with each passing moment. Inside the vessel's central chamber, Kirksell adjusted the biometallic implants that served as both communication devices and status symbols among the senior diplomatic corps. Earth looked pathetically small from this distance. Kirksell had processed thousands of technological proposals from younger species, and each one followed a predictable pattern of disappointment. Humanity was just another footnote in the grand tapestry of galactic civilization, ambitious yet fundamentally limited. "Transmission incoming," chirped a junior communication officer, their silicon-based vocal apparatus producing a sound that resembled wind through crystal chimes. Earth Central Research Consortium requesting formal diplomatic engagement. Kirksell's multifaceted eyes shifted through 17 different spectral ranges, a gesture that translated to profound irritation. Another waste of time. The diplomatic challenge had become routine. Another species believing they'd discovered something revolutionary, only to be gently, or not so gently, educated about their technological limitations. The communication screen flickered to life. Dr. Marcus Reynolds, head of the Earth Central Research Consortium, appeared looking both nervous and defiant. Behind him, fragmented images of a lunar research facility suggested something more than a standard presentation. "Representatives of the Zarn Collective," Dr. Reynolds began, his voice carefully modulated, "we request a formal technological assessment of a breakthrough material development." Kirksell's internal communication network buzzed with barely contained derision. Breakthrough. Humans had been making such claims for centuries. Each time, the result was the same: a minor innovation quickly contextualized within the broader landscape of galactic technological development. The vessel's internal systems began processing the preliminary data transmission. Standard scientific protocols dictated a comprehensive review before any diplomatic engagement, but something in the initial data streams caught the attention of the ship's advanced analytical systems. Anomalies appeared, not just minor discrepancies, but fundamental contradictions to established material science principles. "Recalibrating analysis," mumbled the junior officer, mandibles clicking with confusion. Kirksell moved closer to the primary viewing screen. The data suggested impossible molecular configurations, a material that appeared to dynamically restructure its own molecular matrix in response to external stimuli. Such a concept violated nearly every known principle of material science that the Zarn had developed over millennia. "Impossible," Kirksell muttered, though more to themselves than anyone else. The diplomatic protocol was clear. When a younger species claimed a significant technological breakthrough, the Zarn Collective would dispatch a delegation to verify, and typically demonstrate, the limitations of their discovery. It was a time-honored tradition that had maintained the Zarn's technological supremacy for generations. Preparations began immediately. Specialized testing equipment was activated, devices capable of generating conditions that would atomize most known materials, pressure chambers that could simulate the core of neutron stars, radiation fields that could strip molecular bonds in microseconds. These were not just testing tools. They were instruments of technological humiliation. Dr. Reynolds continued his presentation, outlining the basic principles of what they were calling the adaptive molecular harmonic alloy. Each description seemed more implausible than the last. A material that could dynamically redistribute stress. A substance that appeared to communicate with its own molecular structure. Adaptive responses that suggested something closer to living tissue than inert matter. Kirksell's senior advisors were already preparing diplomatic talking points, how to politely explain the fundamental impossibilities of the human claims, how to guide this young species toward more productive technological pursuits. But deep within the ship's analytical systems, something unusual was happening. The initial data models were producing results that defied standard predictive algorithms. Microscopic simulations of the proposed material behaved in ways that challenged fundamental understanding. "Preliminary analysis incomplete," reported the junior officer, a note of uncertainty creeping into their typically precise communication. Kirksell felt something unprecedented, a flutter of genuine curiosity. Not excitement, Certainly not respect, but a recognition that this might be more than the standard technological disappointment they had come to expect from younger species. The diplomatic vessel continued its approach to Earth, a massive crystalline arrow cutting through the darkness of space, unaware that this would be far from a routine technological assessment. Humanity was about to teach the Zarn Collective a lesson they would not soon forget. The demonstration chamber gleamed with an antiseptic brilliance that felt more like a surgical theater than a scientific testing facility. Jack Harper stood at the center, surrounded by a team of researchers who looked equal parts excited and terrified. The Zarn delegation occupied a raised observation platform, their crystalline bodies refracting light in complex patterns that suggested both curiosity and skepticism. Kirksel's primary communication tentacle extended, projecting a holographic interface that simultaneously translated and analyzed every microscopic detail of the upcoming test. "Proceed with your demonstration," the alien representative announced, the words dripping with an unmistakable tone of condescension. Dr. Marcus Reynolds stepped forward, his hands carefully positioning the small metallic ingot into a containment field that could withstand conditions more extreme than the surface of a dying star. "What you're about to witness," he began, "is a material that fundamentally challenges everything we understand about molecular structure." The first test began with a controlled plasma burst, a stream of superheated particles that would typically vaporize most known materials in microseconds. The observation team watched as the small ingot sat motionless, seemingly defenseless. Then something extraordinary happened. Instead of disintegrating, the metallic sample began to vibrate. But this was no ordinary resonance. The vibration produced a sound, a deep, almost melodic hum that seemed to emanate from the very molecular structure of the material. Holographic displays erupted with impossible data streams, showing molecular bonds rearranging themselves in real time. Kirksel's communication tentacle froze mid-motion. The plasma stream continued, intensifying to levels that should have obliterated the sample. But the metallic ingot didn't just survive. It began to transform. Its surface developed a liquid-like quality, waves of metallic motion that seemed to dance with the incoming energy. The sound grew more complex, shifting from a single note to a harmonic chorus that suggested something closer to communication than simple molecular response. "Impossible," muttered one of the Zarn observers, their crystalline body vibrating with a frequency that suggested profound disbelief. Jack Harper allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Years of ridicule, of being dismissed by conventional scientific communities, had led to this moment. The material wasn't just absorbing energy, it was conversing with it. The plasma test continued, pushing beyond all established parameters. Most materials would have long since been reduced to atomic dust. But this alloy, this impossible creation, continued its strange molecular dance. The sound it produced began to alter the plasma itself, creating patterns of energy redistribution that defied every known principle of physics. Dr. Reynolds adjusted the testing parameters, his hands moving with a combination of scientific precision and barely contained excitement. "Molecular restructuring at 98.7% efficiency," he announced, his voice breaking slightly. "Energy redistribution beyond theoretical maximum." Kirksel's entire delegation fell silent. The demonstration moved to its next phase, a test of structural integrity under extreme gravitational stress. A containment field began to compress the metallic sample with forces that would crush diamonds into subatomic particles. Most materials would have immediately fractured or imploded. The alloy sang. Literally sang. A complex harmonic that seemed to push back against the gravitational forces, creating a standing wave of energy that actually began to destabilize the testing equipment. Measurement devices went haywire, holographic displays flickering with data points that made no immediate sense. "We're detecting quantum-level communication within the molecular matrix," one of the human researchers whispered, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and barely contained terror. The Zarn observers began a rapid-fire communication in their native language, a series of clicks and crystalline resonances that suggested profound confusion. Their entire technological paradigm was being challenged in real time. Jack Harper stepped forward, the demonstration reaching its crescendo. The metallic sample now pulsed with an inner light, its surface a living, breathing entity that seemed to defy every fundamental law of material science. "This," he announced to the stunned audience, "is just the beginning." The demonstration chamber fell into a silence more profound than the void of space itself. Something fundamental had changed. And nobody, not the humans, not the Zarn, not any civilization watching, fully understood the implications. The challenge arrived like a gauntlet thrown down by an ancient warrior. The Zarn Collective's formal documentation stretched across 15 holographic screens, each page a testament to their technological hubris. Jack Harper studied the specifications with a mix of scientific curiosity and barely contained excitement. "They've created the most extreme testing environment in known galactic history," Dr. Marcus Reynolds muttered, tracing the complex blueprints of the testing chamber. The specifications read like a catalog of impossible conditions, a crucible designed to break not just materials, but the very concept of material integrity. The chamber would simulate conditions that existed only in the most extreme cosmic environments. Pressures that could compress matter into states more dense than neutron star cores. Radiation levels that would strip molecular bonds in nanoseconds. Temperature gradients that oscillated between absolute zero and millions of degrees in fractional moments. Jack's team worked around the clock. Engineers, quantum physicists, and metallurgical experts from every corner of human scientific achievement assembled in the Lunar Research Facility. They understood this was more than a scientific test. This was humanity's moment to prove its worth on the galactic stage. "We're not just testing a material," Jack explained during a late-night strategy session. "We're challenging an entire civilization's understanding of what's possible." The Zarn had intentionally designed the challenge to be impossible. Their previous technological assessments had always followed a predictable pattern. Younger species would propose a breakthrough, and the Zarn would systematically demonstrate its limitations. This time felt different. Preparation involved creating multiple iterations of the alloy. Each sample was slightly different, incorporating lessons learned from previous tests. Jack had discovered that the material seemed to learn, to adapt in ways that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't just a passive substance. It responded, communicated, evolved. 2 days before the final test, an unexpected communication arrived from the Zarn Collective. Senior Diplomatic Coordinator Kirksel personally transmitted additional specifications, each more extreme than the last. It felt less like a scientific challenge and more like an attempt to humiliate humanity. The final testing chamber looked like something between a scientific marvel and a nightmare. Massive electromagnetic containment fields created a space where normal physical laws seemed to break down. Radiation shields that could contain solar flares surrounded the central testing area. Quantum sensors capable of measuring changes at the most fundamental levels of matter were calibrated and recalibrated. Jack's team worked with a precision born of desperation and hope. They understood what was at stake, not just a scientific breakthrough, but humanity's reputation in the galactic community. "If this works," whispered Elena Rodriguez, the lead quantum physicist, "we change everything we know about material science." The night before the test, Jack made a discovery that both excited and terrified him. The alloy samples had begun to exhibit behavior that suggested something beyond simple material response. During a routine calibration, he noticed the metallic samples subtly shifting, almost as if they were communicating with each other. "It's like they're alive," he muttered, reviewing the holographic data streams that danced with impossible complexity. The Zarn delegation arrived with an entourage that seemed designed to intimidate. Crystalline beings whose very existence challenged human understanding of life itself. They moved with a grace that suggested technologies millennia beyond human comprehension. Kirksel's primary communication appendage extended, projecting a holographic interface that seemed to dissect every molecule of the testing environment. "Proceed," the alien representative announced, the word carrying the weight of 1,000 technological dismissals. Jack Harper stepped forward, the small metallic sample nestled in a containment field that looked fragile but contained technologies beyond most species' understanding. "Ladies, gentlemen, and representatives of the Zarn Collective," he began, his voice steady. "What you're about to witness will change everything you understand about material science." The testing chamber hummed with potential. Centuries of human innovation, decades of Jack's personal research, and the hopes of an entire species balanced on the edge of this moment. The test was about to begin. The moment the test began, reality itself seemed to bend. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in stunned silence as the metallic sample began to respond to the testing environment in ways that defied every known principle of material science. What had started as a controlled experiment was rapidly becoming something entirely different, a living dialogue between human innovation and fundamental cosmic principles. The first indication that something extraordinary was happening came through the quantum sensors. Instead of simply measuring the alloy's response, the sensors began to synchronize with the material's molecular vibrations. It was as if the instruments were no longer observing, but communicating. Jack Harper leaned forward, his hands hovering over the holographic interface. The data streams looked less like scientific measurements and more like a complex language. Patterns of energy and molecular restructuring that suggested something closer to communication than simple material response. "It's learning," he whispered. The testing chamber continued its assault. Temperatures fluctuated between absolute zero and millions of degrees. Gravitational forces compressed and expanded with enough intensity to crush matter into states rarely witnessed in the known universe. Radiation levels would have atomized any known material in microseconds. The alloy sang. Not metaphorically. Literally produced sound waves that seemed to push back against the extreme conditions. Researchers watched in disbelief as the material developed what could only be described as adaptive consciousness. It wasn't just responding to the environment, it was negotiating with it. Krexel and the Zarn delegation fell silent, their crystalline bodies vibrating with a frequency that suggested profound confusion. Their entire technological paradigm was being dismantled in real time. Elena noticed something even more extraordinary. The alloy was beginning to synchronize with the human researchers' bioelectric fields. Sensors picked up minute energy transfers that suggested a form of communication beyond traditional understanding. When Jack's heart rate increased with excitement, the material's molecular structure would subtly shift, almost in response. "We're not just testing a material," Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're establishing first contact with something entirely new." The symbiotic relationship became more pronounced with each passing moment. The alloy began to anticipate stress points milliseconds before they occurred, restructuring itself to redistribute energy in ways that challenged fundamental laws of physics. It was learning, adapting, communicating, existing in a state between matter and something else entirely. Jack Harper moved closer to the containment field, his hand hovering near the surface. The material seemed to reach back, creating intricate molecular patterns that matched the electromagnetic signature of human touch. "It's responding to us," he said, a mix of scientific wonder and barely contained excitement in his voice. "Not just as a material, but as a collaborative system." The Zarn observers began a rapid-fire communication in their native language, a series of clicks and crystalline resonances that suggested they were witnessing something beyond their comprehension. Senior Diplomatic Coordinator Krexel's communication appendages trembled with a mixture of fear and reluctant admiration. As the test continued, the alloy demonstrated capabilities that blurred the line between material and living system. It could redistribute stress, communicate molecular intentions, and adapt to environmental challenges with a fluidity that suggested something closer to intelligence than passive matter. Elena's quantum sensors began to pick up patterns that looked almost like neural networks. The material was developing what could only be described as a form of distributed intelligence, a molecular consciousness that could think, adapt, and respond. "We're looking at something entirely new," Jack said, his voice filled with a mixture of scientific wonder and profound respect. This isn't just a material. This is a new form of existence. The testing chamber continued its impossible assault. Conditions that should have instantaneously destroyed any known matter were being not just resisted, but engaged with. The alloy was no longer just a substance being tested. It had become a participant in the experiment. As the final moments of the test approached, the researchers realized they were witnessing something that would fundamentally change humanity's understanding of matter, intelligence, and the very nature of existence. The Zarn delegation watched in stunned silence. Humanity had just changed everything. The news traveled faster than light-speed communication networks. Within hours of the Zarn Collective's initial transmission, every advanced civilization in the known galaxy had received fragments of the extraordinary discovery. Jack Harper's metallic breakthrough wasn't just a scientific achievement. It was a seismic event that would reshape galactic understanding. Transmission centers across human-controlled space buzzed with unprecedented activity. Research facilities that had previously dismissed Jack's work now scrambled to understand the implications of the adaptive alloy. Government agencies, scientific consortiums, and private research organizations all wanted a piece of the breakthrough. On Earth, a hastily assembled international conference convened in the United Nations Stellar Research Complex. Representatives from every major scientific institution gathered, their faces a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Dr. Marcus Reynolds presented the initial findings, his holographic display showing molecular configurations that seemed to defy every known principle of material science. "This is more than a technological breakthrough," Reynolds explained, his voice resonating through the packed conference hall. "We've discovered a form of material intelligence that challenges everything we understand about the nature of matter itself." The Zarn Collective's response was unprecedented. Instead of their typical dismissive diplomatic approach, they requested a comprehensive data exchange. Senior Diplomatic Coordinator Krexel transmitted a series of detailed inquiries that suggested a level of scientific humility never before seen in their millennia-long galactic presence. Alien civilizations began to take notice. The Chlorian Consensus, a network of silicon-based intelligences known for their advanced material sciences, dispatched a diplomatic envoy. The Nexus Cooperative, a loose alliance of research-focused species, activated emergency communication protocols. Jack Harper found himself at the center of a storm he had never anticipated. Interview requests, scientific symposiums, and diplomatic meetings consumed every moment of his time. Researchers from across the galaxy wanted to understand the breakthrough that had seemingly emerged from humanity's most dismissed scientific margins. The adaptive alloy became the subject of intense speculation. Some researchers theorized it was a form of distributed intelligence. Others suggested it represented a new state of matter that existed between solid, liquid, and something entirely new. Each analysis revealed more questions than answers. Quantum communication networks began to buzz with theories and counter-theories. The material's ability to adapt, communicate, and restructure itself at a molecular level suggested capabilities that went far beyond traditional understanding of materials. It was as if the alloy had developed a form of collective intelligence that could respond to environmental challenges in real time. Jack's original lunar research facility became a fortress of scientific activity. Security measures were implemented that rivaled those of most classified military installations. Every sample of the adaptive alloy was treated with a combination of scientific curiosity and profound respect. The economic implications were staggering. Industries from construction to space exploration began to reimagine their entire technological approach. Spacecraft design, infrastructure development, medical technologies, all faced potential revolutionary transformations. Most surprisingly, the Zarn Collective's approach changed dramatically. The diplomatic delegation that had arrived to humiliate humanity now sought genuine collaboration. Krexel personally transmitted a series of research proposals that suggested a fundamental shift in their technological worldview. "We have been wrong," the alien representative communicated in a transmission that would be studied for generations. Humanity has demonstrated a capacity for innovation that challenges our most fundamental understanding of technological development. Scientific journals across multiple species communication networks began to deconstruct every available piece of data. The adaptive alloy represented more than a material breakthrough. It was a window into a new understanding of intelligence, adaptation, and the fundamental nature of matter itself. Jack Harper stood at the center of this storm, watching as his lifetime of rejected research transformed into the most significant scientific discovery in galactic history. The small metallic sample that had begun as a desperate experiment in a forgotten lunar workshop had become something far more significant, a symbol of human potential, a challenge to every established technological paradigm, a beacon of hope that suggested humanity was capable of things no one, not even humanity itself, had imagined possible. The galaxy watched and waited, understanding that everything had just changed. The first warning came as a quantum pulse at the edge of human-controlled space. Most monitoring systems would have missed the subtle disturbance, but the new adaptive alloy-enhanced detection networks caught something that no previous technology could have perceived. An invasion force emerged from hyperspace, the Krell Dominion, a species known for ruthless territorial expansion and technological warfare. Their attack fleet consisted of 300 massive warships, each designed to obliterate entire planetary systems. Conventional human defenses would have been overwhelmed in minutes. Jack Harper watched from the Lunar Research Center as the first defensive protocols were activated. The adaptive alloy, which had been studied and refined since its initial discovery, was about to face its most critical test. Human ships were equipped with hull plating composed of the new material. As the first energy weapons from the Krell fleet struck, something extraordinary happened. Instead of simply absorbing or deflecting the energy, the alloy began to resonate. Each weapon strike was met with a molecular response that not only neutralized the incoming attack, but began to redirect the energy. "It's communicating," Elena Rodriguez muttered, watching the holographic displays. "The material is learning from each attack in real time." The Krell Dominion had conquered dozens of civilizations. Their weapons were designed to overwhelm any known defensive technology. Plasma torpedoes that could melt through conventional shielding. Gravitational disruptors that could tear ships apart at the molecular level. Energy weapons that could strip away protective layers in microseconds. None of those worked here. The first wave of attacks revealed the true potential of the adaptive alloy. Human ships didn't just defend, they transformed. Incoming energy was absorbed, analyzed, and redirected. Weapon strikes that should have destroyed entire vessels were transformed into propulsive energy. The ships began to move with a fluidity that defied traditional understanding of space combat. Senior Fleet Commander Rachel Chen coordinated the defense from the flagship horizon. "We're not just defending," she announced to her crew. "We're teaching them a lesson." Each Krell weapon strike became fuel for the human counterattack. The adaptive alloy integrated into the ship's systems created a living, breathing defensive network. Damage was instantaneously repaired. Energy was redistributed. The very concept of a static defense had been shattered. The Krell Dominion had never encountered a species that could turn their own weapons against them. Their initial assault, designed to be overwhelming, became a catastrophic miscalculation. Jack Harper worked furiously from the Lunar Command Center, helping to coordinate the material's adaptive responses. The alloy was doing more than defending. It was learning, evolving, creating defensive strategies that no traditional military algorithm could have conceived. "It's like the material is thinking," Elena said, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and tactical analysis. "Not just responding, but anticipating." 12 hours into the conflict, the Krell invasion force found themselves in a battle they could not comprehend. Human ships moved with an impossible grace, their hull plating shifting and adapting with each incoming attack. Weapon energy was absorbed, analyzed, and returned with devastating precision. The adaptive alloy had transformed human defensive capabilities into something that was part technology, part living system. Ships communicated with each other through molecular resonance, creating a unified defensive network that responded as a single intelligent organism. Commander Chen's voice rang out across the fleet communication network. "This is what humanity is capable of," she announced. "This is what innovation looks like." By the conflict's end, not a single human vessel had been destroyed. The Krell Dominion's invasion fleet was reduced to floating debris, their most advanced weapons turned into nothing more than energy for human defensive systems. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had rewritten the entire understanding of technological warfare. Jack Harper stood in the Lunar Research Center, watching the final moments of the conflict. The small metallic sample that had begun as a desperate experiment in a forgotten workshop had just changed everything. A new era had begun. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Jack Harper approached the central platform. Representatives from hundreds of different species watched with a mixture of anticipation and barely contained fear. The adaptive alloy sat before them, a small, unassuming sample that had fundamentally rewritten the understanding of material science, technological innovation, and the potential of intelligent life. Kirksel, the Zarn Collective's senior diplomatic representative, now sat in a position that would have been unimaginable mere months ago. Where once stood an alien of supreme technological arrogance, now sat a being humbled by humanity's unprecedented breakthrough. "What you are about to witness," Jack began, his voice calm and measured, "is not just a technological achievement. It is a fundamental reimagining of what is possible." The sample began to pulse with a soft, rhythmic light. Holographic displays erupted around the chamber, showing molecular structures that danced and reconfigured themselves in real time. It was no longer just a material, it was a living system of extraordinary complexity. Elena Rodriguez stood beside Jack, her quantum analysis systems providing real-time translation of the material's molecular language. What had begun as a desperate research project in a forgotten lunar workshop had become humanity's most significant contribution to galactic understanding. The adaptive alloy demonstrated capabilities that challenged every known scientific principle. It could communicate, learn, adapt, and respond with an intelligence that blurred the line between material and living system. Sensors showed it was simultaneously processing information at molecular, quantum, and macroscopic levels, a form of distributed intelligence that defied traditional understanding. Representatives from the Chlorian Consensus leaned forward, their silicon-based bodies vibrating with scientific excitement. The Nexus Cooperative's delegation exchanged rapid communication pulses that suggested both admiration and profound concern. Jack detailed the journey, the years of rejection, the endless nights of research, the moment of discovery in that forgotten lunar facility. Each revelation was accompanied by a demonstration that left the Galactic Council stunned. The material could heal itself, redistribute energy with perfect efficiency, communicate across molecular distances, adapt to environmental challenges in milliseconds. It was a living testament to human innovation, a middle finger to every civilization that had ever dismissed humanity as a young, primitive species. "This is not just a material," Jack explained. "This is a new form of existence, a bridge between what we understand as matter and what might be possible." Kirksel's communication appendages moved in a gesture of profound respect. The Zarn Collective, once the most technologically arrogant species in the galaxy, now sat in genuine humility. The adaptive alloy began to resonate, not just with the surrounding technology, but with the bioelectric fields of the beings in the chamber. It was communicating, learning, expanding its understanding with each passing moment. The Lina's analysis showed something even more extraordinary. The material was developing a form of collective intelligence that could potentially span entire technological systems. It wasn't just a breakthrough in material science. It was a new form of distributed consciousness. Human representatives watched with a mixture of pride and trepidation. They understood that this discovery was more than a technological achievement. It was a statement about human potential, a declaration that innovation knows no boundaries. The Galactic Council would debate the implications for generations, but in this moment, Something fundamental had changed. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, not through military might or diplomatic manipulation, but through pure scientific innovation. Jack Harper allowed himself a slight smile. The small metallic sample pulsed in response, a silent communication that suggested something closer to partnership than simple material response. "We're just getting started," he said softly. The universe listened. And for the first time, it seemed to listen with genuine respect. #epilogue. In the years that followed, the adaptive alloy would transform every aspect of galactic civilization. Space travel, medical technology, planetary engineering, communication systems. Humanity had done more than make a scientific breakthrough. They had opened a door to something entirely new.